So onward we go. Now we're moving on to the housing decisions. Again, the very important topics, right? Consumer goods on to the ultimate, if you will, in consumer good. It would be a house, the home that you're purchasing, or the housing decision that would be that it would take a large portion of your budget, if you will. So how you spend your time, money affects your housing choices. Personal preferences for housing are modified by financial factors, of course. Everything is modified by financial factors. A budget and other financial records can help you determine the appropriate amount for your housing expenses. To allot for your housing expenses, and in fact, everything from how much of a house you can afford if you want to buy to renting, etc. All the things that kind of go along with it. So first, I guess you want to probably evaluate what your housing needs are, for example. So if you're young and single and you're kind of starting out career-wise, et cetera, then renting is probably the easiest, best choice to make. Or if you want to purchase a home or condominium, if you're looking ahead, you could do that as well, of course. But the rental affords you the most flexibility, and the different paths along the way. A single parent, similar so far as renting is concerned. And you want to, if you do purchase a home, you want to make sure that it's a relatively low maintenance home, so you can, so you're spending more time with your children as opposed to, working on your home or working on doing yard work, etc. That's where the condominium might come into play. But again, all these things they factor in, all these things to consider. A couple of children no longer at home. Again, rental is an option. Renting a home, renting condos for convenience, and so on and so forth. So again, you're looking at housing that requires minimal amount of maintenance and to meet those lifestyle needs. I mean, unless you like to tinker or, garage-wise, or if you like to do yard work, it's again dependent upon that. But typically, there's rental is an option for all of these, if you will. Young couple with no children. Again, rental offers you more flexibility. Purchasing a home, you're able to think about it in terms of that long-term financial security, building up that asset, building up the net worth in terms of, buying into a home and paying down the mortgage, if you will. Couple with young children, again, rental or purchasing the home. If you're in a rental apartment, might be difficult with young children, kids needing, places to play and so on and so forth. But again, it's all dependent. And ultimately, again, when we get down to the retired person, again, all these decisions are out there, and there's a wide array of options that you have at your disposal, of course. So the housing decisions that you make, depending upon your lifestyle choices, life situation, the opportunity cost of housing choices, interest earnings, lost on money used for a down payment, because once you spend that money, then that money is gone, right? You no longer can save it if it's buried, if it's put into the home. Although you could consider your house an investment, but that's for another discussion. Deposit. So the timing and cost of commuting to work where you live, and so the further away you are from work, oftentimes the less expensive the housing. However, longer is your commute time, the more difficult it is for you to get to and from work. Long commutes can be very, very trying on, families, on, health, etc. Renters, of course, lose tax advantages. So there's a good and a bad to all these things. And equity growth, the growth in the value of their home, for example. The time and money you spend to repair and improve a lower priced home, that's the sweat equity that goes into it. Are you able to get that back? Are you able to recoup that time and effort when you have to have a home built to your own personal specifications? That can be a very, very costly endeavor, and it can take quite a bit of time. So there are a lot of back and forth trade-offs, and there's a tremendous amount of opportunity cost involved as well. So there's kind of a decision tree that's involved. In this case, we're looking at a house, right? So the evaluating the housing alternatives. So if you rent, the advantages, of course, is that it's easy to move into. There's fewer responsibilities for maintenance, minimal financial commitment in terms of, paying your first and last month rent, whatever the lease agreement might be, but it's rather limited. Disadvantage, of course, there are no tax benefits associated with it. You're not building up any equity in the home or in that piece of property. You're not really owning it. You're just renting it, and there are also limitations so far as like pets and so on and so forth. Renting a home itself, so moving from apartment to home, it adds to the advantages. It's similar to the apartment. It's easy to move in. Um, Less maintenance than would be involved. You contact the landowner, the landlord or whatnot to get repairs done. More room, of course, than the house gives you more opportunities, and again, still with that minimal financial commitment. Disadvantage, of course, is that there are higher utility expenses than would be with an apartment, a larger space, assuming it's a larger space. Limitations regarding remodeling. If you don't like the look of the interior of the home, you're kind of limited. You can't really go in there and tear out a kitchen and put in a new kitchen, although the owners may or may not like it. The choice is that the point is that you would be paying for it yourself, so it doesn't make much sense. Owning a home, new house, advantages, no previous owners, and the pride of ownership, tax benefits that accrue to you, and the disadvantages, the financial commitment can be enormous. Higher living expenses than renting, and there's limited mobility, similar when you're owning a previously owned home, along the same lines, but again, the advantages are pretty straightforward. You would be in an established neighborhood, pride of ownership. Disadvantage, the financial commitment, the possibility of some major repairs that might have to be done. Owning a condominium, again, similar to a home, and that there are tax benefits that accrue to you. There are fewer maintenance responsibilities. Some of it goes to the actual the homeowners association, or maintenance fees that would be associated with it, which would be a disadvantage as well. You're paying those monthly maintenance fees, and it is a large commitment, very similar to a home. In terms of you're limited in terms of mobility and so on and so forth. There's less privacy, obviously, than a house, because you're sharing walls with your neighbors in most cases. Cooperatives, this is where you have ownership of something, so it's not a bad thing. It's a very stable property values in general. The downside is that they can be quite difficult to sell, because you're just owning one part of, maybe it's 100 units in the cooperative, then you own one share of that cooperative. So you're selling this cooperative, and it has to go through probably more steps than you would like to have. Owning a manufactured home, again, we're talking about mobile homes, etc. They're less expensive than the others. There's flexibility in terms of the actual location, so on and so forth. And you have all the advantages of a home, except on the disadvantage side, it may be difficult to sell that home going forward, because in general, we're talking about the house itself depreciating over time. It gets used up, if you will. Financing may become very, very difficult, and the construction quality may not be as much as you would like it to be. I'll leave it at that. So the process involved, again, it's a cycle. Once again, select an area, rental amount, compare cost and facilities, talk to current and past residents. So this is when we're talking about a rental unit. Verify the lease agreements. You should talk to an attorney about this, about the lease, to make sure that it's not terribly expensive, but you want to make sure that the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, that there's no surprises if this is the case. So if there are two names on the lease, one person can be held responsible for the full rent if the other person leaves. So you might be renting it with one or two other people, and if they split on you, then you would be on the hook for paying the entire rent. Living within the rental, you have to keep things in, looking for the facility that makes sure it's in good condition, respect the rights of others regarding noise. There are oftentimes noise requirements, like after 9 o'clock, no loud music, for example. It can get pretty tricky at that. And you want to make sure that you get renter's insurance. A lot of people do not have renter's insurance, and it's very inexpensive, but something to kind of keep in mind. Keep your apartment clean, leave in the same condition as you moved in. That way you don't lose out on your security deposit. Or you might be charged something in addition to that if you leave it in less in worse shape than the way you actually when you moved in. So there are advantages to renting. Moving is easier in general. Moving is no fun no matter what, but moving into a rental unit is easier to deal with. There are fewer responsibilities. Renters usually do not have to be concerned with maintenance and repairs. Renters have fewer financial concerns or no expenses associated with the property itself in terms of taxes, insurance, and upkeep. Lower cost to get in. You don't have to pay a 20% down payment of the value of the home that you're renting, for example. Or the apartment. Renters pay a security deposit, which is less than any down payment, of course. The disadvantages are numerous as well. So there's a good and a bad side of this. Fewer financial benefits. You don't get to write anything off interest-wise. No tax deduction. Restricted lifestyle, meaning that you're not as free as you would be if you actually own that apartment, that condo, that home, etc. Right? You're very limited regarding any modeling, pets, and so on and so forth. There are legal stipulations that can be quite onerous at times. You don't even realize it when you move in, but there's a cost in terms of that security deposit, utilities, and renter's insurance. So it's not like you're off the hook so far as like other expenses are concerned. There are still expenses that are out there. So a lease is a rental agreement, meaning a lease over a period of time. You're renting the property you agree to pay the rent on the property over a period of time, typically a year, sometimes as much as 2 or 3 years. But again, typically it's not on a month-to-month basis. A rental, it's usually at least about a year. We'll leave it at that. So within the framework of that lease itself, it describes pretty much everything that you are on the hook for in terms of like how much the rent is going to be when it's due, the terms again of the agreement in terms of security deposits, etc., and listing of all the utilities and appliances that are located therein, and your responsibilities for paying for those utilities, etc. Restrictions on pets and altering the property in any way. Tenants' rights, whether or not you can sublease the apartment or sublet the apartment or the rental unit. In other words, say there are two people that are renting and one person leaves, the other person is left behind. Are you able to again rent out that apartment to another person? So it becomes very, very difficult. So there are always conditions, of course, where a landlord may enter the rental unit to check on the unit itself to make sure things are okay. Charges for damages that would be associated with after when you're moving out, those can come back to bite you and take a bite out of your security deposit or even more. So the legal details of a lease it's pretty straightforward. They're itemized, walking through the description and address of the property, the name and address of the owner, the landlord, lessor, and the name of the tenant, the lessee, or the tenants, the lessees, the effective date and the length of the lease, the amount of the security deposit, all the stipulations that would be included therein would be in there. Of course, at the end of this, you would be signing off on this, agreeing to the terms that you have to abide by in order to rent that apartment, so far as pets and so on and so forth are concerned, all the exclusions, all the criteria that you'd have to follow.